what are you guys' thoughts on the lack of support and the lack of like complete dedication to Squadrons as like a supported game?
Welcome to Uplink.
I mean, I think everybody can kind of agree that it straight up sucks.
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about it. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
No. I mean, I was just gonna echo what Boom said. Like, you know, we're all pretty bummed, honestly. I think, you know, we're disappointed that it didn't get the love I think we all thought it deserved. You know, you've been extremely vocal on this. I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I've kind of got a unique situation because, like, I was with Squadrons from the beginning, pretty much. Like, they told us before it was announced, and like they kind of hinted at it for a long time, and then we got to play it early and test it early, and like the second I played it, like I knew just based on having flown it that this was an amazing game. And I am an EA game changer. I'm friends with like a lot of people that work at EA and Motive, and first of all, Motive did nothing wrong in this, in my opinion. But I just think, market research be damned, EA really missed the mark on it. Like, okay, I understand it being a AA game or a less than $60 game. That's fine. But I do think that, first of all, the game had a very poor launch. I think it maybe could have used a delay or something because there were a lot of tech issues at launch. Yeah, like COVID, the game almost certainly got delayed that we don't know about. There were a lot of tech issues at launch. But there were other options for Squadrons. This is going to be sacrilegious to a lot of people, but if you look at like the Steam chart, like the Steam achievement list, you see that very few people actually go in multiplayer. And I think that's honestly just because for a lot of people, after having played games like Battlefront 2 and whatever else, they weren't expecting the quality, robust multiplayer service we got. Like, I've just been thinking about this tournament that we recently ran, Twin Suns, and like how amazing a tournament ran by EA would have been at launch. Like Boomstick ran Operation Ace the Invitational, which was amazing and super fun at launch. But that was before the game even had custom match features. That was like coming from not an official source. Like, I just think about how EA could have either designed the game so that it was using cosmetics or something to have a longer life, which I know people hate. But if it came to you know, getting more support, I'd be happy to pay for cosmetics,
dude.
Or
100%.
just yeah, and I'm 100% certain that's something they thought about, not from any insider knowledge, but I mean, obviously it was. But even besides that, like, there's been no competitive Star Wars game really. Like esports are exploding right now, and like that's part of the reason why like Jordan and I are having our conversations about like the future of Star Wars tournaments and stuff. But like, the fact that EA's had the license for this long and hasn't jumped in with a big esports title, and then this perfectly made, basically arena MOBA game is designed and is super great, and they just don't even launch it with custom games. Like, it baffles my mind. Like, I imagine how exciting a $10,000 EA tournament in week one, or even pre-launch with creators or something like that. Like, how much hype that could have drummed up instead of like paying, because if you look at Twitch the day Squadrons released, they paid a bunch of streamers to stream the game, and they're not cheap. So I think about how that money could have been invested in a different way for a lot more return, and because they haven't thrown the competitive community a bone. I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling a bit, but they haven't thrown the competitive community a bone, despite like the amazing things people are doing in the space. And I find that very frustrating.
Yeah, and it sucks too, because I can tell that there's people from like Motive and EA that want that to happen. Like, they want to be able to support the game and the competitive community and stuff, but they just can't. And it just, it sucks.
In many ways, Squadrons was not from a development side, but from a EA perspective side, was in the shadow of Battlefront. In terms of controversy, in terms of they had such a backlash with the whole cosmetics and loot box controversy with Battlefront, that Motive was basically they were the I'm sorry game in terms of EA's marketing of the game.
Now people are begging them to add loot boxes and stuff.
Like, what world are we in?
Squadrons almost suffered a similar fate that like Titanfall 2 did as well, right? Like with like the lack of support, the launching against crazy other titles, it didn't receive, the love it deserved initially, which is which is also a reason I could see a resurgence down the road, very realistically. But again, when when you have a community that's so driven to create an esport and competitive niche within the game, and then to not even, like you said, throw them a bone, or even give them the leeway to run an event or support to run an amazing event, and just have it all community driven, it's kind of a slap in the face to the own community, to be honest. It's a little ridiculous when it comes down to my thought process. And I agree with you, Eck. Like, spending 10K, 20K, 50K on creators playing the game at launch, as opposed to putting that towards engaging the community that's actually going to keep this game alive.
Yep.
I mean, that seems like a bad investment in my part. I agree with you.
You can make so many fans organically, and you can still, I mean, they got Shroud playing the game. You're not going to get Shroud's numbers running a Squadrons tournament most likely in the first day, but EA streams anything with hype beforehand, and it's getting 10,000 plus viewers, more than that. You could have made a lot of genuine Squadrons fans through an EA tournament, rather than, and again, nothing against Shroud at all. I don't know his thing about him, but I'm guessing he based on the fact that he didn't stick with the game, he was playing it for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, and I've got, like, I'm a streamer myself. I've done sponsored streams. Like, I get it. It's completely cool. I'm happy it exists, and that should be a part of your launch strategy, perhaps. But like, it's basically just token support at that point if you're not actually going to follow through, support streamers, support, like, because it's 2021. Like, I look at like what Rocket League is doing, or like what Halo is doing. Like Halo's been fighting tooth and nail to get their esports scene going to various degrees. They pump money into that thing. Obviously, EA is not going to do that with a AA game to the same extent, but like, do something. Give us like a, like, help publicize my event or another event, or like Cal Cup has a long history that they've been putting on events monthly. They've all been great. There's no chance of like, objectionable content. Like, signal boost that,
So a question for the two Jordans. Do you guys have numbers on the amount of viewership and community rallied around esports titles?
I'm not really following. Like, that can vary wildly depending on like the title.
But like, just as a whole, would you say esports is as large as or close to the size of, let's say, football?
I mean, if you look at the top end of the esports world currently, in 2019, the League of Legends World Finals was the exact same viewership of the Super Bowl of that year. So when you look at the objective top, they're almost mirrored at this point, and esports is still growing, and traditional sports is trying to figure their way through, right? So when you look at the growth pattern, I see esports dwarfing traditional sports in the next decade or so, and I think a lot of parties would agree with me on that. When it comes down to these unique niche communities, I agree with Boom. It varies too wildly to actually stick in a direct number on it. Squadrons on a good week, like after a Twin Suns tournament when we had, phenomenal viewership and, great showmanship and a well-run tournament throughout, the Squadrons numbers jumped, right? Everyone's kind of like, oh, I want to be in this community. When there was a lot of animosity built in and, stuff was going on behind the scenes, people shied away from that community. So from a niche community perspective, I think there's too much variety to really nail it down. From an esports as a whole picture perspective, sky's the limit.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, yeah, right now, esports as a whole, just as a concept, is definitely approaching and already surpassing some traditional sports. And so just esports is there. It's just a matter of new titles being difficult, I think, to, I guess, cater to that whole entire audience. Because I mean, if you look at a lot of the esports that are like games in there, is super difficult unless you're Riot and you've already got this pedigree of League of Legends and stuff like that. And so small games are generally, like Jordan was saying, going to be difficult to like get a slice of that pie.
Yeah.
Like even for example, though, like to add to that, like, when we're talking about smaller developers, like Not the Right, like Fall Guys just added custom lobby support that now has esports capacity, right? We can create a tournament and an organization around that now and create an environment and a community that can be supported. So, I think a lot of developers now need to realize their games, if they want them to be an esport, they need to be launched esport ready, as opposed to having the support after the fact.
I think when it comes to Squadrons too, like, I don't mean Squadrons the sequel, I mean Squadrons as well. Like, it comes down partially to expectations. Like, is Squadrons going to be the next League of Legends or Counter-Strike or, any other AAA esport? Like, probably not. But what it could have been and what it should have been was, like, popular. Like, it could have been an esport that was popular enough to support, some full-time streamers, support some bigger pro teams and more for pro teams, although I really love the pro teams we do have, and most importantly, to support kind of the continual interest in the game. I kind of have an interesting take, like an interesting perspective on this as somebody who runs a YouTube channel, because for a while my YouTube channel X2, that's my second channel that I kind of run with somebody else, we were solvent off Squadrons alone.
That's fascinating.
But it's just for like we had our best ever month in probably December or maybe October, just like when Squadrons hype was at its highest. Like, it was doing enough to support me and somebody else full time. Now I do have another YouTube channel, but like, had I needed to, it would have been more than enough. Like, I remember our first ever Squadron stream, we had 4,000 viewers for Operation Ace, I believe. Most of, like, there were Jordan, you might know, but there were a few of us pulling 1,000+ viewers. Easily.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it's just like, I understand what they were going for with the whole thing was, okay, we want to release a game like X-Wing and TIE Fighter back in the day, which is okay, but I mean, Squadrons didn't release with as much content, and kind of the idea that there wasn't going to be any ongoing content, I think, really hurt kind of interest at the beginning, because it's like, okay, we've played these 6 maps, because there were 6 at launch, there are 7 now. It's like, have I done it all?
I've said this many times in the past. It's great to have the heart behind, we're going to release a game like it was in the 90s. But for games coming out in 2020, that is not feasible from a development investment time frame, unless you like completely pack it with content, like you're saying. Those games were designed specifically for, we can't patch this game at all, and we need to make sure that it has enough content, and that content is as solid as it needs to be to support itself for 3 years, because a lot of the target audience, especially in the 90s, were kids playing Star Wars games. They can only play one game, so why should they choose to play your game?
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% right. Like, if you look at X-Wing Alliance, which I've kind of held up because it's sort of the last of the old X-Wing guard, there are like 30 flyable ships in that game. You know what I mean? But it's also like the fact that if you want to make 2 different ships back then, you change some stats. You don't need it. Like, if you look at the quality of art that you have, for example, at the interior of an A-Wing, like, you can't build 30 ships with modern, art standards and meet even the AA standard with a $40 price tag. You just can't anymore. So like, I like the idea, but it's just a little bit heartbreaking, because this is a game that we've been waiting for so long, and they nailed everything that matters, but not. It's like
you were inches away from the finish line, and then all of a sudden you didn't tie your shoes at the beginning, so you just boom, slam right before you finish. Like, Boom and I were having a conversation when Squadrons was announced, and we were like, this better have custom matches, and it better be able to do this. And as soon as it was announced, like, I believe we messaged each other like, oh no, come on.
Well, yeah, I was at that point, obviously planning the first Operation Ace, and then like before launch, the news came out that they were gonna have private matches at launch, and that took the wind out of my sails real hard. I almost didn't do the first Operation Ace because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? So there was a couple weeks where I just kind of like stopped working on it. I wasn't going to do it until I was just like, no, somebody needs to do this. Like somebody's got to do some kind of event to get like some attention for this game. And so I came up with a different format and obviously went through with that. But like that sucked.
It was a huge success still. Like even with those caveats, you know what I mean? Like the first Operation Ace was great. I don't really remember what the viewerships was like on your end. So maybe you can talk about that. But I know like from a community point of view, people were hyped. Like it was really cool. And like even in that sort of very limited space, we actually had a few games, like I'm sure you remember, where like teams would match up against each other.
Yes.
And that was crazy. Like that showed, I think, everybody the potential of the game. And like just not launching with that, like you said, it's just like, what are you thinking? Especially where it was obviously at a stage, like, let's be honest, EA Motive did not whip together the B-Wing custom matches and the TIE Defender in a couple of months. Like that is obviously something that was meant for launch and didn't make it. They should have waited till January.